Hello, hello, and welcome to Anchor Watch. I am your host, Bobby Jones, and I want to thank you for tuning in. So a lot has happened in the last week. It sounds like it's almost as if it's a repeating recorded record or an episode or like Groundhog Day, the movie, where we keep saying new things keep happening. Now, obviously, the big beautiful bill that passed, etc. That's domestic, but as I run down everything I want to talk about this week, I'm breaking it up once again in international and domestic policy. And I want to be able to try to connect thought process because what we are seeing is, if it wasn't so diabolical, systematically it's brilliant because we're imagine America as one long rope, and on both ends, one end is international, one end is domestic, and you're watching it burn simultaneously together. That's what the current administration is doing by trying to establish basically a new world order that has its roots in domesticated reorganization. And I don't think the American people voted for that, but this is where we are. So I'm going to go ahead and start my anchor point now, and I want to harp on the international piece first. So, in some positive news, the Trump administration has done a complete reversal on its weapons policy towards Ukraine. Ukraine now has gone past 3 years of fighting. Um, make no mistake, this is the most cut and dry, clear war of who's good and who's bad in those classic terms since World War II. One nation invaded another. Okay. The United States under Biden was like, we will provide the weapons for you to fight. The EU also stepping up, NATO allies stepping up. But the weapons have become depleted. Uh, Russia's strategy is just to keep throwing weapons and people at this war because now this is about ego with Putin. He thought this would be a 6 week war. We're now in year three. Okay. So, that being said, the United States, after the election, had a dramatic policy shift that really favored Russia. The Trump administration basically tried to make it sound neutral. No, it favored Russia. Now, with Ukraine almost depleted of armament, I think here in the last 72 hours, someone got to President Trump and said, understand, if Ukraine falls, this is going to be on your watch. So now a radical change has happened where the United States is like, we will provide weapons to keep Ukraine fighting. Now, Trump made a point to say that the weapons will be defensive in nature. Okay, defensive in nature. I don't know what the desired end state from the Trump administration is on the war in Ukraine. I mean, that it's that simple because if we wanted Ukraine to win, we would say, hey, here are the weapons you need to fight and win. If this had happened under any Republican president since Eisenhower, this would be a completely different ball game. Ronald Reagan would be like, what do you need? Where do you need it? How can we help? I would say any Democratic president. This has been something that we have not seen. It goes against the 9 previous presidents that fought and won the Cold War. It does not fall under any strategic category of containment or amplification or anything of that matter. It's almost as if President Trump wants to do just enough so the American people don't turn on him, but not enough so Putin doesn't turn on him. So the question I have internationally and strategically is, who does Donald Trump serve in this scenario? Is he serving the American people? Because if you take a poll, it's overwhelming. America wants Ukraine to win. Is it, hey, I want Putin to win so I can get more favors or whatever they have, what arrangement ever they have between the two of them? We don't know. But the reversal, as positive as it is on the international stage, is more of the whiplash that we have been accustomed to. So what do I mean by that? Pivot from that into the tariffs that have been plaguing the country since President Trump has come back to office. The trade war, which he started, which he initiated, has created economic uncertainty that we have not seen in decades. That being said, he comes out and gives blanket tariffs. I guess the hell with the negotiations for many countries yesterday. Many of them in that Southeast Asia quadrant where you have Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, all of these countries that are right around Vietnam. Now, if you remember, Vietnam struck a deal with the United States, a trade deal, which was very advantageous to the United States. And so it seems like Trump is trying to press to get the same deal out of everybody else. Understand the countries that he's highlighting are part of ASEAN, the uh, alliance of southeastern Asian countries down there that primarily started as a economic and diplomatic alliance. He's gambling, saying that hey, the rest will fall like Vietnam did. The question that I would have is, what if they don't? Because right now, the only trade deals that have been signed, at last I saw, was the United States. With the United States is China, the UK, and Vietnam. Everybody else, over 100 nations are still in the negotiation phase, to the point where now Trump is sending out letters because he's too lazy to do the work. He's too lazy to negotiate these individual deals. And because of his transactional nature, I don't think has the diplomatic deftness to actually pull these things off. So he's trying to dictate to the world. Well, the world is going to push back. If you listen to reports, whether you listen to NPR, whether you watch foreign news from other sources, international communities are pivoting away from the United States being the center of the economic universe. Why? Because of the unpredictable nature that the United States has projected abroad. So I don't know. Let's take something like wine being imported from France here. Well, the French are like, well, we don't necessarily need to go to the United States as much as we did. Let's double to Canada. Let's double to Mexico. Let's look at other options that we know we can plan for, which, if you are a business owner, makes total sense. You know, we we seem to have a policy that is as fickle as the inflatable tube guy that you see on the side of the road that is um, advertising something. It's just, wow, whatever the wind blows, that's what's happening. Whoever talks to the president last, that's what's happening. But I don't know of any business that can be ran successfully with that mentality. And so the tariffs create economic uncertainty. The pivot for Ukraine and the actions in the Middle East with Iran create military uncertainty. Okay. The prime minister of Israel came to Washington yesterday to talk about Gaza. Still don't know what the end state looks like there. The problem that we're running into, people, is if you ask the White House, what is the desired end state of your trade war, your conflict in the Middle East, the conflict in Ukraine, they will not be able to give you an answer. So if you don't know what your goal is strategically, the tactics that are being used will never make sense. And we're operating under this policy of just trust whatever Donald Trump says. The trusting and not verifying is the part that makes no sense. So, all of that being said, ladies and gentlemen, compare this to a year ago today. Are we more stable? Are we in a better economic position? Are you as an American more healthy? Do you feel more confident in what's happening? These are the questions that need to be asked. That's the litmus test. And that international picture that I just described is connected to the domestic piece. So let me pause there before I move into the domestic piece. Were there any questions from the international side? Let's see. Let's see here. I don't think so. But yeah, the major question is, are you better off than you were this time last year? Moving to the domestic piece and how this is all connected. The United States is not healthier than it was this time last year, like literally and figuratively. Let's start with literal. Measles, measles have made a comeback. Measles have made a comeback in the United States because of the vaccination policies or lack thereof that the current administration has pushed. Now, granted, vaccines have always come under fire from a certain population in America, but with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who was noted on being anti-vaccine until he walked into HHS, we're seeing the policies of vaccines not being mandatory start to attack our children. So the measles spread that's happening that started in Texas, where, again, vaccination optional, we had eradicated, by the technical term eradicate, by 2000 measles in the United States. And now this is the fiercest comeback we've seen since then. That's significant. There are other viruses, other things that have spread. There's another tick outbreak in the same basic overlapping region in Texas that has spread, and yet very little coverage is happening there. Public safety is an issue. What else is happening in Texas with the floods? The criticism of resources for NOAA, basically the weather forecasters, and how they're able to communicate to the public when there is a major weather event has come under heavy scrutiny. Why? Because you're talking about over 100 dead, many of them young girls that were at a camp near the Guadalupe River. So the blame game is going around. Christy Nome is saying, well, the system was outdated. We're updating it, et cetera, et cetera. But it's funny to me. She has not named the system that's outdated. She has not named what it's being updated with. No details whatsoever, because they don't want the accountability. She also has punted to the Texas officials, and the Texas officials are looking at her like, what are you talking about? Mind you, FEMA has been gutted since the president new administration has come into office. Mind you, that they have fired hundreds of meteorologists. Mind you, the state of Texas had the same thing happen in 1987 and chose not to invest $1 million in an early notification system along that river. So, all of these things, whether you're talking local, state, or federal, currently have failed, and no one wants to take accountability for it. All we know is we have dead children. And for the most part, most of those casualties could have been avoided with the proper warning system, with the proper forecasting, with the proper communications. That is terrible. That is terrible. And when asked if he is responsible for it, of course, President Trump said no. Then he comes and doubles down in the Oval Office and says, from now on, basically, it's up to governors to respond to nationwide emergency level type things. It's unbelievable. Um, he completely abdicates responsibility, but he wants every piece of authority. So the question I have is very simple: what does the president do in crisis? Apparently, it doesn't concern him. It doesn't concern him. So utilizing FEMA and other nationwide level organizations to which all American citizens pay taxes into, he's saying should not be utilized in crisis. He wants nothing to do with it. But at the same time, he will spend $150 billion on ICE. He will spend billions of dollars creating camps like the alligator Alcatraz to deal with what he believes are the threats that he initially said they were just going to go after the criminals. Now they're going after everybody. Uh, Question: should we be calling this a regime? Administration lends to legitimacy. That is true, and that's a very fair question. When you cross that Rubicon, it's hard to uncross it. But if you look at it from an outside, unbiased perspective, the way that the Constitution was designed, the first article of the Constitution is supposed to provide the primary check to the second article, i.e., Congress is supposed to check the president. They're not doing it. In many cases, they're enabling it. The fact that you have American citizens now, not just immigrants, American citizens who are being snatched up and having to show and prove that they're Americans, quote, the show me your papers mentality, that is definitely more regime. And I'm not making this up, it's being covered. And people don't like to hear it, but that's the reality of it. And my question for America is simply this: is this the standard? So right now, people of color, brown people, black people are being snatched up. If you have an accent, you're being snatched up. But now we're starting to see white people. You've had some white immigrants get snatched up and just ask, what are you doing here? People who were on student visas, legitimate, snatched up. And then with the news that happened here in the last 48 hours about TPS, temporary protected status, being revoked for people from Honduras and Nicaragua, what are they supposed to do? By that revocation happening, they have 60 days, 60 days to self deport from the United States when they came here under a legal program, a legal program. They didn't sneak in, they went through a process, they went through laws, and now they're changing the law on them, and now they're having to live in terror. I don't know of anybody. Heck, just moving down the street from one house to another can require more than 60 days for most people. But to pick up and leave your life and then to go back to the nation you were leaving because of the terrorist violence, the threat to your life, the threat to your livelihood, it goes beyond process. It goes back to the number one point of what this administration is doing. There's a cruelty level that is added to every aspect of what they're currently doing. Okay. It's the visual of locking up people of color, specifically standing in front of cages of guys shaven bald and just in white boxers looking tough, like, to be honest with you, like they're on a slave stand. That's what it makes me think of. Whether they're guilty or innocent, it doesn't matter. That power pose is a sick fetish, and it starts with Stephen Miller. He wants them deported. He needs them deported. He needs that legitimacy. And everybody that is pushing that has a part of them that wants it too. It's sick. And people need to start calling it for what it is. If you want to deport people, there's a humane way to do it. You don't go raiding places where people are looking for work. By the way, work that Americans need done. It's happening. And all while this is going on, more of the destruction of the norms of the Constitution of the United States are happening. How do we as citizens face ICE? That's a very legitimate question. Number one, law enforcement is supposed to identify themselves with badges and with warrants if they're trying to arrest somebody. That is standard procedure. We have had many incidents where people are acting like ICE because they order stuff off of Amazon, get dressed up, look like they're military or trying to look like they're military, and assaulting people. So the first thing you need to do is dial 911 and make sure and validate that that's actually ICE. That's number one. Number two, whatever you do, keep your cameras rolling. Keep your cameras rolling. If you know of a lawyer in the local area, have them on speed dial. But you need to document everything that's happening as it happens. And you need to verify that those people are there. Typically, when ICE goes into a neighborhood, they will tell the local officials because they may need the local officials to provide support. But as this has become more clandestine, they're using regular, civilian cars. They just pop out of nowhere and they grab people. That's why the record matters. And what's killing me is the Supreme Court has basically said, well, you need to prove that you're an American citizen based on recent rulings and how the jurisdiction is going. It's insanity, but you can't fake the film. So get it all on tape. Um, Kind of pivoting a little bit, all of this is happening while the merger between church and state is continuing at an accelerated pace. So the Heritage Foundation, the group that put together Project 2025, they are um, they are very hell bent on creating a theocracy in a lot of respects, a religious based government. Um, Based on Christianity, but nevertheless religious based. So the Trump administration is working to remove what's called the Johnson rule. So Senator Lyndon Baines Johnson, before he became president in the 1950s, had a law passed saying if churches and religious organizations want to maintain their tax exempt status, that they cannot endorse politicians or become part of the political process. It's basically what it is, the separation of church and state. Well, Trump is trying to change that with a new policy saying, hey, churches are allowed to endorse. Now, this again is part of a larger issue where church becomes involved in government, but yet at the same time maintain their very lucrative tax exempt status. It's foul. It's foul because religion was supposed to, from day one, despite all these people trying to make stuff up, literally people like Thomas Jefferson wanted and stated that it's supposed to be separate. Government and religion is supposed to be separate. And they're trying to change that as we speak. So imagine one of these mega churches endorsing a candidate while not being taxed. That's what they want to happen. And then Trump has taken it a step further here recently by trying to remove all wind and renewable energy um, tax exemptions from the industry and doubling down on fossil fuels, while the entire planet, to include China, has pivoted to renewable energy. It's almost as though the man is stuck in the 80s. He thinks he's J.R. Ewing from the primetime soap Dallas. It's all about oil, 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 and he thinks it's cool without thinking even 5 years into the future. The tax incentives that allow for renewable energy plants to be created helps offset the high cost of creating them before you get the benefits of the energy that they produce. He does not understand that, and so he's doubling down on that. And then he made the offhanded statement that he wishes property taxes were eliminated. Now, this goes back to him always trying to finagle his way out of paying property tax when he was a real estate developer. And it shows that he does not understand that local and state government in particular use property tax to do government things, to do their business, to fund their governments. It's like there's this extreme lack of civil understanding that the president has. And he keeps saying these things and he keeps dropping this poison into the bloodstream to make people, for lack of a better term, question how the American system of government works. That's the overall effect, and it's somewhat scary. Now, if you notice my tone, I'm not yelling, I'm not being bombastic, I'm not calling him names, I'm not doing that. I'm just stating the facts. And when you have experience around the world like I have after, 26 years in the United States Navy, and you see other forms of government and you see certain things happening in America for the first time, you identify them as seeds that could germinate and grow into something that could eventually rip apart your country. And right now, the confidence in American government is plummeting from the bill that was passed to Medicaid now being affected. Veterans like myself having to fight the cuts they want to impose. They since have come out and said they're not going to fire 83,000 people from the VA. Now they're just going to fire up to 17,000 or something like that. These are all positions that studies have shown that we need, but we're supposed to be happy that 50,000 some odd people aren't going to be fired. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So what we're dealing with right now domestically is chaos. Chaos as far as who's doing what and why. What role does government at all levels, local, state, and federal, is supposed to play in your lives? And then when things hit the fan, what is the role of the federal government? What is the role of the president of the United States? Right now, if you ask Donald Trump, based on what he said the last basically 5 days, he's not responsible for anything. All the governors are supposed to be responsible for everything. And if the governorship of states are supposed to mimic the office of the presidency, then by definition, he should be responsible for something. But right now, I've yet to hear Donald Trump say the words, I am responsible for blank. And that's a problem when you're supposed to be the leader of the strongest nation on earth. Let me see. We got some time here. Let me see if there are any questions. Any questions in the chat? Let's see. Um, Let me ask you guys a question then. If you were trying to explain the current state of the United States of America relative to the rest of the planet, let's say some aliens came down today and they were like, tell me about America today. What would you say? Right? You're coming up on the 250th anniversary of this experiment, and I will continue to use that word experiment because that's what it is. An experiment, you need to have people who are subject matter experts who are consistently monitoring it. Well, right now, I would say that the experiment is in the beginning stages of complete failure. Failure because when the different pieces denoted in the Constitution of the United States are not acting as they should, meaning 18 different things that Congress is supposed to do, and they're picking and choosing only a few of them to execute. Meaning the court system, the judicial system that has been set up in Article 3, only certain courts matter, other courts don't. And that is based on what Article 1, Article 2 rather, the chief executive chooses to follow with no fear of consequences. It's um it's chilling because if you look in American history, there have been ebbs and flow of how powerful the president is versus how powerful Congress is. But I'm telling you guys right now, this is unprecedented. This wouldn't happen 20 years ago, the things that are happening right now. Um, and it sure as hell would not happen 50 years ago. With a Congress 6 years ago, where a Congress that had served in like World War II, there's no way they would allow one person to do the things that they're doing, dismantling federally established organizations and administrations that Congress passed a law to establish. He now gets to just gut without congressional approval. It's unprecedented. It's unprecedented. Let's see. Are there any other questions? Any questions? Wait, hold on. It popped up and then it went away. Uh, let's see. What concern the Hex FS sector if he's trying to gain control of the military? Well, low-ranking soldiers. Uh, it's a very good question. The officers up and down the chain of command should understand what a lawful order is or not. The enlisted maybe, but not so much. But even junior officers are supposed to understand what a lawful order is. Lawful order being, based on the Constitution, based on the various titles that we have, the U.S. Code, but then also based on the Geneva Conventions, which the entire world agreed upon after World War One. And the reason I raise that is because there are certain aspects to the actions that the president wants the military to take, going back to his first administration, where he was like, "Can we just shoot the protesters in the leg?" That's a violation of international law, not just the United States. So there is a working knowledge of it. But again, when you remove all the judge advocate generals, AKA the military lawyers, like they did within the first 30 days of coming in office, it's going to make it murkier. There's no mistake in my mind that President Trump wants the military to be his personal Gestapo. He wants to deploy them anywhere, everywhere in his name. Period. Full stop. The Marines were not necessary in Los Angeles, California. They were not. They were not. You know, the fact that he wanted them to parade in front of him in D.C. completely unnecessary. Just unnecessary. He wanted it anyway. He wants the United States military to pledge fealty and loyalty to him. Unfortunately for him, the oath is not worded that way, nor has it ever been intended to be executed that way. So I still have hope that our military will be fine. I think they hear the voices of people from all over saying, "What are you guys doing?" when Trump gives orders. But at the same time, I'm fully aware that the threat and the fear is real. It's real because we have never had a commander in chief who wanted to use the military, especially on domestic soil, the way the president wants to do it. Let's see. Are there any more questions? Well, all right, and that's right at 30 minutes. That's perfect timing. Please, you can go on my Substack and ask questions that pop up if you see news that happens. But I do a morning briefing every morning for my premium subscribers. But most importantly, if something pops up that needs to be talked about, I will talk about it if it can't wait till next week. And then finally, here by the end of this month, we're going to expand our show. Stay tuned for details for that, where we're able to not just interact with you better, but to get continuous subject matter experts to help explain things that you may see in the news. Remember, there are no dumb questions when it comes to your country, to your government, and to your way of life. Ask the question, have the intellectual curiosity and the moral fortitude to push forward, and we're going to be okay. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for tuning in to Anchor Watch, and I'll see you next week.